Today on the DML News Podcast, we have DML in the studio, though not physically. He is on the phone, so he will be able to participate in today's podcast episode. And we're going to talk about the aftermath of the first presidential debate, or we should say the first true one between Trump and Kamala, and the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. We have this and more, and it's all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hey everybody, it's Denny here on the microphone, Ryan behind on the controls, and DML, like I said in the beginning, is here, though he is tuning in via cell phone, so we have him to participate in the entire episode because there is a lot to talk about regarding yesterday's debate between Trump and Kamala, and we're going to talk a little bit towards the end about the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. We have a lot of clips here as well to go over from the debate, probably not as much as we would even like to fully in scope everything that happened last night, but we definitely took some clips that basically showcase Kamala's lies, for starters, but things that she was a little sneaky on, and then parts where Trump was strong, and then maybe parts where Trump was at a disadvantage considering considering he was going up against Kamala, David Muir, and Lindsey Davis. So, DML, do you want to let everyone know you're here?
Yeah, first of all, Denny, great job last night holding the live event. Your mother told me that I'm probably going to find myself on the unemployment line because you're better than I am, she says. So that's a problem. But anyway, no, really, I was proud of both you and your brother last night. You did a great job. I'm here in Miami. I was at an event last night with a British journalist who was talking all about October 7th in Israel and how it is that the West and the United States here is being taken over by very bad forces. And that's something I'd like to talk about at the very end of the program, especially when we start talking about 9/11. But in terms of last night, the debate, even though you and I were on for about a half hour after the debate was over, I've had a lot of time to think about what we saw last night. And ultimately, I think that the majority of voters in this country have already made up their mind. They either want to have the economy as it was back when Trump was in office. They may not have liked the way in which he made the sausage, but they liked the way it tasted. Then you got the other people that even though the sausage is the best tasting sausage they ever had in their life, they hate them. And so they would rather pay high interest rates. They'd rather pay more for food, more for gas, more for everything. They'd rather have their open borders because they just can't stand it when Trump tweets. This is the idiots that we have in our country. I can't believe it, but this is where we are. And I saw a video this morning, Denny. I was going to send it for you, but I figured we had too many clips already. But it's a black guy. He's in the street, and he's asking young guys, probably about 25, 26, 27 years old. I'd say probably 5, 6 guys, 3, 4 girls. And he asks them if they're in, the favor of Trump or Kamala Harris. And they all said Kamala Harris. And I retweeted the video, and I said, every time that we want to believe that this election is stolen, we've got to remember that there are a lot of people in the United States that have had their brains stolen from the mainstream media because the things that these people were spitting back just did not chime into what reality is. And that's what we saw last night. So I'd like to line up this first clip that just lasts about 10 seconds. Today being 9/11, 23 years after it happened, I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I still remember running from the buildings and watching my fellow Americans drop from 80 stories, jump, if you will. And it was, it's heart-wrenching for me every time I think about it. But last night, she had the audacity to say that January 6th was the worst hit on our democracy since the Civil War. And so, Ryan, if you want to play that clip to piss me off, go ahead.
Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
I find that just incredibly ridiculous. I had said last night before the debate had started that she was going to really hone in on January 6th. At this point, I think it's actually almost a main targeting system a lot of Democrats have against Trump whenever they bring him up. But the fact that she would have almost the gall to say that when it's literally the night before of the biggest terrorist attack on our soil is actually just mind-baffling.
Well, Denny, look, when you look at somebody like Kamala Harris and you look at somebody like Joe Biden and Barack Obama, they really don't give a rat's ass about 9/11. I'll give you an example. This morning, Biden put out a tweet, or somebody from his office put out a tweet saying that we should never forget 9/11, never forget. And I never really respond to his tweets, but this one I couldn't help myself because, like I said, I am a survivor of that day. I said, never forget. Come on, are you kidding me? You've left these borders wide open. So this way, every terrorist from all over the world can come into this country. And not only we give them free cell phones and free places to stay with free food, but we're basically saying, hey, and any time that you want to attack us, whether it's an October 7th style attack or whether or not you want to do something to our nuclear facilities, something to our water treatment plants, whatever it is that you want to do, go right ahead. We're going to let you into the country. So this way you could do it. So this guy and Kamala Harris, to pretend like they give a rat's ass about 9/11 and national security is just an absolute joke. And the fact that she could do what she did there, Dennis, focusing on January 6th as if it was this big, huge, horrible day where our democracy was really at risk and people died because of Donald Trump was just hideous. And the fact that ABC News allowed that to unfold in their studios and during their broadcast tells you how sad ABC News is.
Oh, look, I mean, the lies and statements that they just kind of let be permitted without really fact-checking her is just par for the course. In fact, I think on our next video, while it's not ABC, we do have a clip related to MSNBC where last night Kamala says one thing regarding guns, and then there's proof in the pudding from years in the past where she says another thing. So it's very clear she doesn't stick to policy, but in the scope of that, she says that she's not going to take away guns, and yet, like I said, years past, she kind of promotes a buyback program. So we have that clip back to back that we'll have Ryan play right now.
And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
What would you do about the millions of, specifically, assault weapons that are already in circulation? What do you do about those?
Well, there are approximately 5 million, to your point, Craig. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. It's got to be smart. We got to do it the right way.
Yeah, so when you see that, right, she lays out onto Trump that I'm not going to take any guns from anyone. Me and Tim Walz are gun owners. And yet there she is in an MSNBC interview saying that she would totally promote a buyback program for assault weapons. And I know we've talked before on the program about if she, God forbid, becomes president, I really do think that she is going to make it a big policy of hers to try and get the Second Amendment dismantled as much as possible.
Look, Denny, when you look at the way the amendments were spelled out, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, is first. There's a reason why it's first. If you don't have the right to speak your mind and your opinion, you don't have a republic, you don't have a democracy, you don't have a free nation. And then the Second Amendment is there to protect the First Amendment. She is going to, if she is the president of the United States, go after the First and Second Amendments, because the real way to destroy the democracy and the republic that we love so much is you have to get rid of those two things. Look over what's happening at the UK right now. You have a citizenry over there that is not armed, and God forbid they say anything that they don't like about the migrants coming in. They're now getting arrested. They're being tossed in jail. You actually have rapists over in the UK who are getting lesser jail sentences than people who criticize the people who carry out the rapes. It doesn't make any sense. So when she says that she's a gun holder, and so too is Governor Walz, all she's doing right there is playing lip service for the people who are on the left who love their guns. And believe me when I tell you, The majority of the people on the left love their guns just like the people on the right. I invite you to go to a place like Vermont. Vermont is littered with liberals, but they have open carry there. They have concealed carry, one or the other. I don't remember if it's open or concealed, but everybody's got a gun up there in Vermont. They love their guns up in Vermont. So when you are a radical and you're talking about that you're going to do a buyback or a mandatory confiscation program, people get uptight about that. So she had to get on there last night and do all the lies she possibly could. And I want to talk about something that we kind of skipped over real quick about ABC News, because I think that, this shouldn't be about ABC News, but they made it a bit about themselves because obviously they went after Trump last night. They were not fair to Trump last night. In fact, Elon Musk wrote exactly how I feel, which was that Kamala Harris better than I expected her to. And we're not going to deny that she did better than we expected. But you cannot deny that the Kamala Harris free pass, one after the next, was given. And Trump was completely 100% fact-checked and attacked by the ABC moderators, which is completely 100% wrong. Should never be doing something like that. So in that breath, if you will, my concern is that you have Facebook using ABC News as a fact checker. Remember that. They are a fact checker for Facebook. And one of the things about that concerns me greatly is that if I put something up that's just a decimal point off or anything else of that nature, what winds up happening is they'll fact check me, they'll fact check Trump, they'll always come after us, but they never, ever, ever will go after the left. And last night was a perfect example of that, Dennis, 100%.
Well, it's definitely relatable to the next clip we have. I find it hysterical how back in June when Trump was debating Biden, CNN made no attempt to do any, kind of corrections towards either Biden or Trump. I think obviously, as we've discussed before, mainly because that whole debate was designed to give Biden the boot. But with the fact checks last night, David Muir was all over the place with whether it's the bloodbath comment or very fine people in Charlottesville comment, which again, all of them have been debunked, and yet they don't want to maybe kind of address those matters. But what I think is crazy is that they tried debunking or fact-checking Trump over what we just have been recently discussing, which is the Haitian migrants in Ohio and elsewhere, taking up people's pets as well as local animals such as like Canadian geese. So we have that clip, and then I want to maybe make a point after we play it. So, Ryan, you want to play that one?
Clarify here, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
television. But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Now, you see, I think that whole fact-checked, or, quote-unquote fact-checked, is so representative of what the mainstream media is capable now, because David Muir says that they contacted the town manager rather than maybe contacting any citizens or any residents of Springfield who have been directly affected by this. Rather, they decide, hey, we're going to call the town manager, who is probably going to want to cover his butt and not actually make a big deal or make any bad headlines portraying the town that the Haitian migrants there are killing off animals. So you think they would do a little more investigation, like, okay, well, if the town manager says this, what about maybe the residents who have been vocally stating that this is happening? And they don't. They purposely stop right there, and they just take the town manager's word, whatever his official actual word was on that matter. But I just think it kind of goes to the scope that people like ABC News or organizations like ABC News love to cherry pick how they want to represent their fact checks.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the governor of Colorado and the police department of Aurora have tried to sell the idea that the Venezuelan gang, TDA, is not taking over those apartment complexes. But yet when you go to the residents who are actually showing videos of how they have to barricade themselves in their own homes, you have other people who said they've had to leave, they're fleeing. So what they do, and this has always been the case, this is nothing new with ABC News, is that they will go out and, like you said, cherry pick who it is that they're going to ask. And of course, they're going to ask somebody who's going to try to keep themselves looking as, in the most positive light that they possibly can. This should come as a no surpriser. Now, I want to focus for a second on Trump, because this is one of those times where I think he lost the ability to drive home a much more important message. Now, look, I'm a dog owner. I've always been a dog owner since I've been an adult. I love my pet. I love all pets, and animals should be protected, no doubt. But we're now discussing whether or not Haitians are cutting off the necks of ducks and dogs and cats. What I would have done if I were in Trump's shoes at that point, I'd say, you know what? I used the pet thing as an example. What about the fact that we have Haitians and migrants from all over the world coming into this country and killing people, raping women, raping young children? In North Carolina alone, we're usually getting anywhere between 100 to 150 cases each single month of illegal aliens sexually assaulting children. And that's just one state. And we know that because there's a group that actually monitors that stuff. How many do you think is happening across the entire country? So, yeah, the pet thing is important. But why don't we just focus in, more importantly, about how many people in Ohio have been the victims of crimes? What about the Haitian who was driving and hit a bus and killed an 11-year-old? I feel bad for the local puppy, but the 11-year-old boy is irreplaceable. So he missed opportunities like that time and time again. And this is where we talked about this last night, Dennis. So for the sake of repeating ourselves here, for people who weren't with us last night, the problem I have with Trump is that he doesn't have the sort of attitude and personality that will go into a 3-day debate preparation. It's just not him. He's hey, I'm an off-the-cuff kind of guy. I know all the material. The issue with not doing that without play rolling constantly like Kamala Harris did, and even like I did with Ben Carson when we were preparing him for debates going back in 2016, is that quite often Trump was found to look like he was flat-footed, a boxer who didn't have any spring in his step. Yeah, he threw a couple of good jabs. He threw a couple of good rights, but he wasn't dancing around. He never owned the conversation. And and many times what he also did was he talked to David, the moderator, as if he was his buddy. And David is not his buddy. He's his adversary. So what Trump did was a lot of times he allowed the conversation to steer his answers where his answers should have steered the conversation. And I talked about this last night. I'll talk about it again. I was trained in media by a guy named John Rowland, who absolutely was great friends with Donald J. Trump as well. And we were taught, or at least I was taught, if you're up there and you've got an agenda that you want to push, and in my case, it was back with my immigration films, they would always want to drag it over to some humanitarian crisis. And how do we know who's crossing the border? And the numbers are really real, and you're a racist. Every time they tried to bring those things up with me, I deflected. So I always use the breakfast dinner scenario, Dennis. If I'm preparing you for a debate, I'm going to say to you, Dennis, listen to me. They're going to ask you about your breakfast every single time because they want to get the fact that you have a bad breakfast. Your job is to always talk about dinner. I don't care how many times they ask you about the omelet, you're going to talk about the steak. And so what happened last night with Trump, for example, on January 6th, is, he says, Mr. President, do you have any regrets for what you did that day on January 6th, for what unfolded on January 6th? And Trump, if you play back that part of a video, we don't have that. But Trump looked like he was sort of stuck in a wash cycle that he didn't know how to get out of. What I would have done in that situation, and I would have prepared him for this, is I would have said to him, listen, President Trump, they're going to go to the January 6th thing every single time. They're going to try to pin this on you. You've got to change the narrative to it. So here's how I would have done it. President Trump, do you have any regrets for January 6th? David, here's my regret. My regret is that I am not the president of the United States. And that's why people are paying double for gas, double for food. That's why it is that they've got Haitians in their neighborhoods that they shouldn't have, illegal aliens running all over the place, Venezuelan gangs, why all of our tax money is being sent to Ukraine and to Israel. I regret that I am not in the White House right now solving these problems. They would have never happened if I was there. Mr. President, we understand, but I'm asking you specifically about January 6th. David, I don't care if you're asking me about January 1st, 5th, 19th, June, July, August. I'm talking about overall. The problems that we've seen in this country would not be the problems if I was the president of the United States. And that's why I'm running again. I'm going to fix the inflation. I'm going to close the border. There's going to be no more wars. And our tax money is going to start focusing on things here at home. For instance, David, why does ABC News continue to focus in on 4 people who were tragically shot at a Georgia school because the FBI and the local police and the school dropped the ball? You keep on talking about this topic, but yet when you talk about the 100,000 people who die of fentanyl every single year from China and the cartels coming over the border, when you're talking about women who are getting raped, children who are getting raped and killed, whether it's a DWI or a murder or anything else of that nature, you blow that off. Why are we focusing on 4 people instead of 150,000? That's how I answer the question. I never give him anything. I'm not going to admit to anything. I'm going to steer the conversation, and I'm certainly not going to give him the clip that he wants for Twitter on the next day.
Well, I think one of the difficulties with Trump being able to steer things was that, of course, the moderators are technically the steerers of the ship because they're asking the questions, but I just found it a little convenient how they got to steer the ship in certain ways when Trump was starting to gain advantage. So, for example, because it relates to the next clip, they did cover an array of topics last night, but for some reason, especially when Kamala's involved, they love to hone in on abortion and reproductive rights and that whole realm. And, everything we always talk about, you would think maybe, to the married man or even the married woman or just someone who's got a family, the number one issue facing you in the country could usually be chalked up to either the illegal immigration or the economy. And sometimes that's more of an ad hoc where they, kind of mend together. But if I'm going to be truthful, I think we're at a point where if you were to ask an unmarried young woman what the number one issue is, I'm led to believe almost a good portion of them are now going to say abortion. And with our clip here, they love to steer, or they love to anoint Kamala. I mean, she failed at Borders Czar, but they love to anoint her as the queen of reproductive rights. That's kind of her main go-to. And yet when Trump finally had a little bit of an advantage trying to call her out, saying, would you support abortion up to 9 or 8 months? ABC kind of cuts him off and deflects. And we have that video. And after the video plays, I'll kind of give a little more add-on here on why I think that the abortion thing is kind of becoming a little more prevalent than we would like to admit. So, Ra, you want to play that clip?
You should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you
could,
veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security.
Yeah, so classic deflection there. They love to spend, the second question and 10 minutes on the abortion topic, and then as soon as Trump raises that question, they deflect to, all right, time to move on to immigration. And, one of the reasons I think this has become such an Achilles heel, at least for Trump, even though he clearly always has to state his position that he's not for, a national ban on abortion, is that when you get someone, this probably was the most gimmicky thing to come after the debate, but when you get someone like Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris, for someone like you or me, we don't, give a damn. Who cares? But I kind of saw it this morning. The impact that she could have on a voter, because look, the voting block isn't men who own land anymore. Obviously, it's if you're an American citizen and 18 plus, you can vote. And unfortunately, a little bit with illegal immigrants and voter fraud now. But I think is a very strong portion of Americans, mainly unmarried younger women, who look to Taylor Swift as almost like this embedded idol that she's going to give her unwavering endorsement 10 minutes after the debate for Kamala because she's a champion of reproductive rights. And it is kind of crazy to me because we see what's going on in Springfield, Ohio, and Aurora, Colorado, and even in some ways on the home fronts of Florida or even New York where we used to live, everywhere. And yet for these women and even some people I know, it's like they think that the abortion topic, not saying it's not important, but that it's the most critical issue facing this country. And when you got someone like Taylor Swift making this prompt declaration and then news media is covering it, Trump even has to respond to it, it's just baffling to me that that's kind of the headspace that some American voters are gravitating towards.
Well, I don't know if I want to say American voters. Look, Dennis, we live in a very divided country, and it is the Democrat versus the Republican, but really, ultimately, it is the liberal mind versus reality. And the truth of the matter is that Trump has said it 50,000 times that he is not going to put a national ban on abortion. And yet nobody at ABC News stopped Kamala Harris and said, President Trump did not say that. President Trump said that he is not going to put a national ban. They don't go to his defense like they do to their own defense or to Kamala Harris's defense. And that's why, when I go back and I talk about PrEP, I've read so many comments online in the last 24 hours, or I should say 12 hours, about how it was so unfair, about how it was three on one. Listen, we went into this knowing that, okay? It's like the person who says, I'm going to book a trip to Florida in July. And then when they get here, they complain that it's hot. I mean, you know what you're going into. And so Trump knew he was going into the lion's den. He knew it. So you have to be prepared for that kind of thing. Now, when she says you want a national ban and ABC News isn't going to stop her on that, the way Trump, I would like to see him respond, the way I would have responded is, listen, the fact that ABC News is not stopping her from lying to people right here is why you're a horrible fact checker. You shouldn't be doing fact checks on Facebook, let alone even holding this debate. I only did it because it was the only thing she would do because she knows that you guys will defend her and attack me. I'm telling the American people right now, I am not going to put a national ban on abortion. This is a state's issue. I am demanding that you listen to me say it because I ain't changing my position on this. This is the way it's going to be. There are people in my own party that are unhappy with me about that. There are people in my party who want there to be a national ban. I'm not the president to do that. I think there are other ways that we can solve this problem. There are a lot of different programs out there for young parents, young couples, young mothers. There's things that we can do to try to help people, either prevent them from having their pregnancy, from getting pregnant, to having assistance and having programs like adoption if you do get pregnant and you don't want to have the child the whole way. I am not going to put a ban on there, and I'm not going to allow you to continue to lie. You people are liars. That's what he should have done every single last time. Now, the other part that you're talking about with the sense that these young girls, these Swifties, if you will, when you look at her endorsement, the good thing about this is that most of the Swiftie nation, if you will, are much younger kids. So they don't have a vote. But you are right. There is that 20-something person out there who thinks that Trump is going to abuse their body and keep them from having these services that they need, which is far from the truth. But they have been brainwashed by these people, whether these people are Swift, ABC News, Kamala Harris, that, Trump's going to come in, he's going to take over your body, he's not going to let you do anything. These are the same people that were trying to force shots into the arms and force face masks onto people for something that was a bit stronger than the common cold. So in one argument, they say, I don't want you putting anything into my arm, and we're demanding that they put something into somebody else's arm. But on this, it's like they forgot where they used to stand. They're all over the place. And this is the problem. This is why I say all the time, Denny, there's something that misfires in the liberal brain. We don't know what it is. I don't know what creates it, but I'm telling you, there's almost no way to fix it. And that's why it is so important that people get out to vote, and why Trump has to start messaging heavy to the independents in this country. We've got less than 2 months, and he has got, let me say this. I'm surprised he wasn't more prepared last night, because as much as you and I and everybody else listening to this program feels as if we're fighting for the future of our country, we are. But Trump's got a bigger stake. He's not only fighting for the future of the country, he's fighting the future of his freedom. If he loses this election, he is going to jail for the rest of his life. So I pray that he is going to take these next 2 months so seriously. In fact, I was saying this, I'm going to, when I'm done with the show here, I'm sending an email off to his campaign and asking, can we please have an hour with President Trump to do a podcast? And if we're granted that whole hour, Dennis, that podcast is going to be me telling Trump what it is that I think we need to do the next time we're on a debate stage, or how it is that we have to market and advertise and message. Because even if he winds up hating me, I don't care. Somebody has got to get in this man's face and tell him we have got to change the way in which we are giving our answers.
Well, we have 2 more clips here. If you're someone who loves Trump, you're obviously voting for Trump. If you're someone who hates Trump or always, aligned with the blue, then you're going to vote for Kamala. So the real concern here is, after last night, especially if this ends up being the one and only debate. I mean, I've read that apparently Kamala wants another one. Obviously, Trump has wanted another one for a while now. But if this happens to somehow be the only one, the real question becomes, where do the independents fall? So with this next clip, it's Trump in good and funny gesture, because he had some good zingers and funny moments last night. Kind of like when he called her out on the excuse me, I'm talking. Referencing her remarks when she made that to Pence from the VP debates years back. But the clip we have here is where Trump jokes to her that he wants to send her a MAGA hat because she's been adopting his policies, or at least on paper she is, because now a lot of the stuff that she's putting on her website kind of reflects what he's already been touting and pushing for a while now. So I guess we'll play the clip, and then I just want to see your take on, where do you think the average independent voter would fall simply after watching last night? So, Ryan, you want to play that clip?
And policies like they have, I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it.
Yeah, so again, in the mindset of the independent voter, the voter that probably hasn't been paying attention at all this election season, maybe gets a little news tidbit here or there, but basically said, oh, tonight's the first debate, I'm going to tune in. When they watch that whole debate and then they see a portion like that where Trump, calls her out for her policy switch-ups, do you think the average independent's going to see through the facade that she is basically copycatting and doing the run spot run with her policy-making decisions, and the fact that she's having help from ABC? Or did the independent voter watch last night and think Trump just basically looked weak and rattled compared to her?
Your question reminds me of when you and your brother and your sister were in school as students, in grammar school, junior high, and high school. And you'd come home and you'd say, yeah, I got a 60 on my test. I failed it. And I'd get pissed off at you. And then you'd say, but Dad, everybody did bad. And I'd say, I don't care what everybody else did. I care what you did. And I know you didn't study hard enough for that thing. You could have passed it. But Dad, everybody failed it. I don't care about everybody. I care about you. And so I think that's where Trump needs to focus his attention for the independents. The independents don't care about Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or the DOJ or Taylor Swift, anything. The independent voter is out there right now trying to figure out how they're going to pay for the rent, how they're going to pay for the car payment, the mortgage, how they're going to keep their kids safe at school. And they're so tired of this BS going back and forth and everything else. what I think the independent voter last night was gypped of was the conversations that we had to have. They don't want to hear about Charlottesville. They don't want to hear about January 6th. They don't want to hear about any of that stuff. They don't even want to hear about the 2020 election. It's all been beaten to death. They want to hear about now. Who is going to give me the solution to how it is that chicken is going to go back down by 25 to 50%? That's what I want to hear. When can I get something like that? Kamala Harris didn't deliver it. Trump tries to deliver a little bit of it. He gets cut off. Sometimes he doesn't give enough detail, which he should. Prime example last night, Dennis, and this falls right into the ballywick of what I've been talking about. Last night, Trump was asked specifically, what is your plan with Obamacare? And he doesn't have one. And it's been 8 years since I was in Iowa, 15 feet from him, hearing him say to people when he first made his first speech, where we were all, because at that time I was a potential candidate, and, it was a speech about what you would do if you were president. And he said, we got to get rid of Obamacare. It's horrible. Well, 8 years later, you should be able to present some sort of a cognitive plan that would say to somebody at home, I like that idea. But he didn't do that last night. In contrast to that, she's sitting there trying to make it sound like Obamacare is the best thing that ever has been happening to this country. So, he loses on that. And that's where I get upset, because the independent voter sits there and says, you know what? I'm not hearing anything from any one of these people. So you're not giving them a reason to follow you. Yeah, another thing Kamala Harris did last night, I don't want to call it brilliant, but it was sort of sneaky and sly, but she gets away with it. She says, you gave us a terrible economy. We never lost more jobs than we did under you. I mean, obviously, that's all during COVID, right? I want to help small businesses. I'm going to give them a $50,000, tax rebate. Now, if you're a small business and you just hear that top line and you don't get any detail behind it, because it's when you look at the detail, it's BS. It would amount to nothing for these small businesses. It's like, oh, really? I'm a small business. She's going to give me 50 grand. Trump never gave me 50 grand. No, she's not going to give you 50 grand. She's talking about giving 50 grand to brand new startups, not the small businesses, to startups. But nobody holds her accountable for this. So this is why, you got a debate last night. Trump wasn't prepared. If he does get a second chance, which I think he's going to, because Kamala Harris thinks that she can flock her feathers now, and she's going to call it as she wants it, Dennis. She's going to be able to pick NBC, CBS, one of the Latino stations. She ain't going to go on Fox, and he's going to have no choice but to say, yes, I'll take that debate, because he's now flat-footed. So when he goes back into that next debate, he has got to come up with specific plans no matter what anybody else is talking about. That's the only way you're going to get independents to vote for him. He's got to remind everybody of how much money they had in their pocket under him and how much it has cost to be under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. If he sticks with that, he's going to win. One thing he did last night, and this may be surprising coming from me, he spent too much time on immigration. The thing about immigration and the open borders is that, yes, people are getting raped and they are dying and we are seeing more crime, but not everybody in America is experiencing that, okay? Not everybody. Everybody is experiencing the high costs of energy and of food and of insurances, everything. So if he wants to reach everybody, the next debate, he should spend as much time on economics as he did on immigration in this debate. That's a big, huge thing. One other thing I want to say about that MAGA hat statement, I would need more time because it's only been, 12 hours, not even. But I would suspect that there is a brilliant marketing play here to where Trump can do something with MAGA hats and Kamala Harris. I don't know if it's taking $1 million of his campaign money, buying 1 million MAGA hats and flooding the next parking lot of her next rally with MAGA hats. I don't know if it's doing an AI where she's wearing a MAGA hat. He does commercials where she's wearing a MAGA hat. I don't know what it is, but he should use the MAGA hat and attach it to her head every single time he possibly can, because that is branding. He's going to say, she's stealing my ideas. None of these are her ideas. And this is why I'm giving her free $1 million worth of MAGA hats. And that would be brilliant.
I would love to see something like that. I think, I know the media would try to spin it negatively, but I think that would be, A very big way to say, I'm glad my ideas inspired yours.
Same thing she did. Look, we all can't stand Kamala Harris, Biden, and the left. All right? We can't stand them. But let me tell you what they've done brilliantly. They have tagged Trump with Project 2025, that no matter what he says, does, or screams, they keep on pinning him on it. Just like Charlottesville, just like January 6th. They keep, all their commercials about Project 2025, he's pinned with it. He can't shake it. They're beating him at his own game. That's what he's done to his opponents. Look what he did to Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis, one of the best governors, if not the best governor of my lifetime, a great conservative, somehow became Ron DeSantimonious, some guy who was attached to George Soros. It couldn't be further from the truth. But that was the tag he got. So now what Trump has to do is he has to do the same thing to her. He's got to tag her as she's a MAGA wannabe. She is just painting all the MAGA policies. She's never going to do it. She's going to try to get to the White House on that with independents. And the minute she gets in there, she's going to do a flip-flop. And so he's got to pound it. It's the opportunity he's got. And it's gimmicky enough to where it would work. Now, with that being said, last night, I thought Trump's best part was his closing statement. Do you have that? Do you have that queued up?
Yeah, I was going to say, arguably, a lot of people had said that the best part was his ending there. So it's about 2 minutes long, and I was going to ask, once we play it, if you had to give it a letter grade, what you would give it. So yeah, Brian, if you want to cue that up and play it, so people can take another listen.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump.
Yeah, when you look at the full scope of that debate, Trump definitely had some strong moments throughout, and there were some moments where he was rattled. But I definitely agree that his strongest part there was towards the end, giving his closing statements. I think the overall theme of asking her, you've been in office for 3.5 years, why haven't you done anything that you're pushing or promoting, and really honed in on it was really right on the mark. I know personally, if I had to give a letter grade, I think I would give it an A, maybe not an A+, because there are some things I would sprinkle and add in there to really hone it in. But I think overall, I would give it an A. I'm just curious what your score would be.
Well, look, overall, as a debate itself, I give it a B-, in the sense that I don't really feel as if there was any substance from either side. And obviously, ABC News did a very poor job. I do think that Trump probably gets a C+ for the night, and she gets a B-. But I think his closing statement was an A. The thing about a debate, and I think people have to understand this when it comes to Kamala Harris, the thing about a debate is that all you have to do is prepare to give 1 minute and 2 minute responses. And that's why Kamala Harris did well last night. Forget about what she said. Was it a lie? Was it true? Was it untrue? Forget about that. The only thing that you got to really worry about is that, hold on one second, Dennis. Getting another phone call in here. Let me just send it down. All right. The one thing that she did brilliantly last night is she came off as being a prosecutor. And we got to remember, she was a prosecutor. And she was able to articulate an argument. Now, if she was to be grilled past 2 minutes on any particular topic, she would look like a fumbling, bumbling idiot because she doesn't understand the economy. She doesn't understand the border. She doesn't understand anything, really. So she could get away with the 1 minute sound bites. Who can't? And that's why you debate prep. And look, most of her night was attacking Trump. She wanted to get him on his heels, wanted to make him feel defensive, and she did a great job at doing that. So to that extent, she gets higher marks than Trump does. Trump knew that he was going into a fight with two cheating fighters. He was going in with Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's brother, and both of them were going to bite his ear. And I think he needs to be better prepared. So to that extent, I say that Trump fell short. I would give Kamala Harris the upper edge. I think you're going to see she's going to get a pop in the polls. The betting line, which I've always been following, is now showing Harris as a favorite. So there's work to be done on the Trump side of things. Now, this morning, if we could just change gears for a second.
Yeah.
Today's 9/11. And, as I've noted to my listeners and followers for the past 23 years, I lived that day. And this morning, Trump was in New York City, standing right next to Kamala Harris, shook her hand, she shook his hand, and they were standing there together, and people were chanting for Trump. And that's in New York City. So I hope that Trump can sort of collect himself, brush it last night off, and come back firing like a man on a mission who is trying not only to save his country, but to save his own freedom. And we have to remember that all of our freedoms are at risk. And if Kamala Harris does indeed win, I guarantee you that this country is going to come to its knees, and we will be attacked in another 9/11 style massacre, whether it's a nuclear facility, an electrical grid, or even if it's something that looks like October 7th over there in Israel. We are going to pay a dear price. And all those little 25-year-olds who are so concerned with what Taylor Swift has to say, they're gonna pay a price, and we're all gonna pay a price. And last night I was at this event, and this is what I wanted to bring up. Last night there was this guy was a British journalist. His name is Douglas Murray, and he was presenting footage from October 7th because he went over to Israel and he was actually filming it. And I mean, the stuff that this guy got on camera just solidifies how horrible that day was. And, unbelievably, the media just looks at Israel and blames them because the Islamic world hates them. At the same time I just saw a recent poll, and I know the polls can't be believed, but the data usually comes back to prove this one right. Historically, traditionally, and year after year, the Jewish community continues to vote for Democrat. And then they can't understand why it is that they're always in a bound of trouble. And I got to tell you something. I'm always a defender of Israel, all the time. But if it comes out to be that Kamala Harris wins this election or wins the Jewish vote, I will tell you this. You will never see me defend Israel again. Because if the people of this country are going to continue to vote for Democrats, just like the black community, which can't get out of its own way half the time, it keeps on voting for Democrats. If you keep on voting that way, not only are you being detrimental to yourself, not only are you being detrimental to your demographic, but then you're being detrimental to me and my family. And then I'm going to have a resentment towards that. So I think Republicans should basically turn a blind eye to this sort of thing next time, because we keep on going out of our way. And yet when it comes down to vote, the Jewish people keep on going Democrat. And that, to me, is a mortal sin.
I agree. I think it's a slap in the face, and it just goes to show that, we try to lend a helping hand we can, and we want to support them over there in the Middle East when they have enemies at their front door and back door and from side to side. But yeah, to see that demographic continuously vote blue, the same people that could care almost less about them in favor of, pro-Palestinian protesters and Hamas sympathizers, it just comes to a point where you can only feel so sorry. So they really need to show out for this election. I mean, just based on that debate alone, when you do hear Kamala speak, and while a lot of it is lies and maybe most of her team giving little catchy sound bites, and even just the little smirks and smug looks she was giving just felt so unpresidential. It just felt very childish and just off for someone who's supposed to be potentially the free, the leader of the free world. My thing is that if you're going to go out and vote, make sure your spouse is voting with you. Make sure your kids, if they're over 18, are voting with you. Make sure your neighbor, your coworker, your friend, you got to get out to vote. I mean, even the whole term, right? Too big to rig. Well, you got to really prove it. You got to show out on election day, or if you're doing the mail-in ballots, then do it. But make sure you're voting Trump. Make sure your vote is counted and accounted for. It's more important than ever, because my fear is that if Trump hit it out of hit a home run last night, do people become too complacent and don't get out to vote? He didn't hit a home run last night. Do people get demotivated by it and think the fix is in and don't get to vote, don't go out and vote? Either way, we got to make sure the voting motivation is there, because when you do get people like Taylor Swift trying to drum up votes in such a cheap way, it pisses me off, because I know that there are such big issues facing this country that maybe to the young voter, they don't see it now, but it doesn't mean they won't see it in 5-10 years' time following, God forbid, 8 years of a Kamala presidency.
It's funny you say all this stuff about, what people's reaction to this is. I mean, I've read comments on Facebook and on X, and not so much on Team DML, but, and I think because the people on Team DML are with us all the time, I feel as if we are very like-minded. The problem I have is that there are too many people on the right that today want to pass off Trump's less than great effort. They want to blame ABC. They want to blame Kamala. Oh, look at the faces she was making. And, it was 3 against 1. And, they were cutting him off. Listen, folks, what do you want them to play fair? These are the same people who you believe stole the election. These are the same people who wanted you to stay in your house and not see your relatives on Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving during COVID. These are the same people who want one world order, take your gun. I mean, come on, what do you expect? Did you think Kamala Harris was going to stand there and give you the kind of facial expressions you wanted? Did you think David Muir was going to sit there and be like Sean Hannity would have been? No, we know what we were going up in and against. If you're going into a gunfight, bring a hand grenade. Don't bring a knife. So, there's got to be a level of accountability. There's got to be, instead of people sitting there and blaming the other side for not playing by the rules that they think Trump played by, you knew this going in. Trump knew this going in. We have got to fight fire with fire. This is how, we talk about we got to get out and vote. We got to get out and vote. Well, one of the other things we got to do is we got to start playing by the same rules. If they're going to go out and do ballot harvesting, we're going to go out and do ballot harvesting. If they're going to go out and do X, Y, we're going to go out and do X, Y, and Z. And until we wind up getting that sort of mindset, if they're going to put out commercials that are going to have lies in them, well, then we're going to put out commercials that are going to have lies in them. If you want to do things about Project 2025, well, we're going to come back and we're going to put MAGA hats on you. We're going to come back and do everything that you're doing tenfold. And until we do that, we're going to keep losing because we're trying to play by the rules. We're trying to play by the Constitution. We're trying to play by what the system was supposed to be set up like. And they're playing based on a system that's rigged, and they're the ones rigging it. So until we do that, I mean, I'll give you a prime example. Why haven't more AGs in conservative states gone after this administration, gone after Joe Biden, gone after Kamala Harris? Why aren't we just suing all of them, even for things that maybe they didn't even do? Because that's what they're doing to Trump. Until you make people pay the same price that we're having to pay, we're going to continue to freaking lose. Okay? I don't want to hear it. You know, if you were a little boy, I remember, let me end on this story. It's a pretty decent story. I think people get a kick out of it. When I was a young guy, I came out of 6th grade, and my father took me out of public school and put me into Catholic school. And I was the new kid that went in there. And when I went in, I went from being one of the more popular kids in my prior school to being a kid that nobody liked when I went in there. I'll make the argument it's because I was the new guy and all the girls started liking me and all the guys didn't like that. And what did they do? They came up and said they wanted to call me out. And I had like 40 guys that wanted to fight me at a school. And my father told me I was going. And I said, Dad, how am I going to fight like this? And I said, you always taught me, you know, that you fight like a gentleman. You don't fight like, you know, you don't kick, you don't scratch, you don't do this. He says, Dennis, if they kick and they scratch, you kick and scratch harder. You come out of that with a victory. It doesn't matter what you got to do to win. When your back is against you, there are no rules. When your back's against that wall, there's no rules. You've got to fight to win, because if you don't fight, you're dead. And that's where we're at this point. We keep on fighting based on the rules. We keep on being the gentleman. We can't. We need to scratch. We need to stab. We need to do whatever we're doing in our fights. And obviously, I don't mean this literally. We have to start doing what they're doing, or else we're going to continue to get our ass kicked. And all we're going to do is say, hey, guess what? We out of the top 100 political podcasts, we've got 95 of them. Well, that's great. We're winning the podcast war, but they're winning the freaking DC battle. And so we've got to wake our ass up. You know, Fox News, top ratings for the past 25 years. Yeah, great. Guess what we're getting out of it? Nothing. Zero. So we've got to start taking a different road. We got to take the road to victory, and that is by holding them accountable. And the best way to do it is play the same game.
I don't think you're wrong, because look, you know, based on that first clip we played, right? You know, she labels him, labels Trump as a threat to democracy, and yet this morning here she is at the memorial shaking his hand with a smile. And my thing is, if you really believed that, if you really believed he was this dangerous dictator that was looking to take over DC on January 6th and all this stuff, you wouldn't be shaking his hand. You know, you're equating him to Hitler or Stalin and all these other, you know, terrible figures in history. And yet here you are, you know, gladly, you know, shaking his hand, putting on the pleasantries. So it's obvious that you're just shooting these words as an act to really just beat him down. You know, he doesn't call her, you know, the equivalency of any of those people. He just says, I think you're the worst VP this country's ever had. And I know he really believes it, because he's seen what firsthand, but he's seen also within the country what she and Joe Biden have managed to do in 3.5 years. So to your point, maybe the fire needs to really be met with fire, because you're going to have someone give you all those labels, still shake your hand the next day with a smile and say, you know, ready for the next debate because she fared a little bit better, you know, with favoritism on her side regardless. It just goes to show that we really got to step it up. I mean, I would love if Lara Trump and the RNC can maybe really make a push this time for moderators that aren't going to play games like David Muir and Lindsey Davis played last night.
But even if they do, Dennis, be prepared as if they do. Always prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And that's what we've got to do. Now, with that being said, we're up on the top of the hour here. We got to say goodbye. I just want to tell people a few things. Number one is we are running a special today. It's my sort of way of giving back. It's the 9/11 day. So if people go to dmlcbd.com/BOGO, the 6.7 ounce and the mini bottles of the Miracle Me body pain relief oil, the stuff that I've been using every single day to help my neck. I got it here in the car to help me. I mean, this thing works wonders. So we're doing a buy one, get one free. They go to dmlcbd.com/BOGO. And I appreciate everybody chiming in today. I'm sorry about if you heard the GPS, there was a lot of turns that we had to make left and right. Your mother's trying to do the best she possibly can. It's she has a hard time finding the kitchen with a map from the bedroom, let alone trying to find where we're going. But thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. I won't be in the office with you tomorrow, obviously, because I'm traveling. But Mommy and I will be back on the Wine and Talk for Friday, and we'll go about it that way. So until the next time, may everybody, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless the United States, and God bless Donald J. Trump. I mean, he's up there fighting. You know, it's easy for all of us to be Monday morning quarterbacks. He's the one who's in it. I just would like to see him prepare a little bit more than maybe he is.
I agree. And, you know, before the Team DML blessing, obviously a very big blessing to all those that we lost on this day 23 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then for today's Team DML blessing, I would like to give it to Julia Sinnard.
Sounds good, Julia. We'll talk to you soon.
By subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML. Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML. Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download